Time for some more 10th edition experimenting as I take on my Assault Necron 1000 point list up against Blood Angels. And it's coming right up.
Necrons!
Nick speaking, and welcome to this battle report. Right, today I am playing a fun 1000 point Assault Necron list. I'm just experimenting and getting used to some of the units in 10th edition, and I'm up against my very old opponent who plays Blood Angels. I've played him many times on the channel, but not recently, and this is our first game of 10th edition. And I thought this was a perfect opportunity to try out an Assault Necron list which I built ready to play and experiment with. So heading up my force was a Skorpekh Lord. I took the enhancement Hypermaterial Ablator. I wanted to try him out with some Skorpekh Destroyers. I had 2 units of 10 flayed ones. The idea was to infiltrate these. And then I had my Skorpekh Destroyers with 2 plasma sights. I did feel the list needed some long range shooting, and I hadn't played Locust Heavy Destroyers yet, so I put those in the list for a little bit of shooting backup. Then I had 6 Ophidian Destroyers with their plasma sights, and the idea was to deep strike these. My buddy had a Rhino with 10 tactical marines in it, and Corbolio, I think that's his name, the character. He had 2 whirlwinds. He took a massive unit of bikes, and he took 2 assault bikes. Then he had a big unit of sniper scouts. We played the only war mission from the core rule book. 4 objectives and no secondary objectives. Quite a basic mission, but I thought it would be good to get us started. We ended up with 3 objectives in a line almost down the middle of the table, and then we had 1 objective in 1 deployment half. We randomly chose which deployment zone we were going to be in, and I ended up on the side of the table with the extra objective. I hid my Locust Heavy Destroyers at the back behind a building. I had my Skorpekh Destroyers with the Skorpekh Lord on the objective in my deployment zone, and then I infiltrated both of my units of flayed ones onto each of the objectives in the centre of the table. The 4th objective is behind the building there on the right hand side. We rolled off and Blood Angels went first. He moved his Rhino up alongside the building. Just for reference, the whirlwind inside the building is actually supposed to be behind the building. We sort of came to that conclusion because I didn't realise where he deployed it, but for the rest of the game we just pretended it was behind the building, couldn't be shot at and couldn't shoot through the building, so we just ran with that. It was just the way it was. And then he started shooting. He shot into my flayed ones with the scouts and got them down to just 1 miniature. And then on the other side of the table he shot and assaulted my other unit of flayed ones, and he got them down to 1 miniature. And it was at this stage I thought to myself, oh boy, I am in trouble, because all I've got now is my Locust Heavy Destroyers, my Skorpekh Destroyers and my Ophidian Destroyers, just 3 units. How am I going to survive and stay on the objectives and then try to do damage to my opponent? So I thought, I'm in a lot of trouble here, and to be honest with you, at this stage, I thought, I'm going to lose this game. However, of course, I carried on to see what I could do. So I rolled my RP for both units of flayed ones, and I rolled a 1 for each of them, so only 1 miniature came back in both units. Now, of course, before that I did my battle shock tests, and the units that was with the bikes were battle shocked. I moved my Locust Heavy Destroyers out and onto the objective, and then I moved my Skorpekh Destroyers in range to assault the bikes. I really needed to get rid of those bikes because they were fast and they had a lot of guns. The Heavy Destroyers shot and killed the 2 assault bikes, and then my Skorpekh Destroyers assaulted the bikes and got them all the way down to just 1 bike. I then assaulted with the 2 flayed ones and I managed to kill the last bike. So those were destroyed or sitting on the objective, and it was Blood Angels turn 2. So my buddy wasn't on any objective, so no primary points scored. He then moved his Rhino up and got out the tactical marines, and then he proceeded to shoot and kill my 2 flayed ones. He then targeted my Skorpekh Destroyers with the snipers, using precision to take out the Lord, and he did do that. The Skorpekh Lord died, and then I used the RP stratagem and I stood him back up, but only with 1 wound. Then the whirlwinds shot into my Scorpec destroyers. They killed one and they got one down to 1 wound. And that was the end of Blood Angel's turn 2. So in Necron's turn 2, I scored 2 points. So I'm sitting on 2 objectives. And then I start to move. I move my Scorpec destroyer unit over slightly to the right. The main reason for that, I was trying to get the Scorpec Lord behind the building so that he was out of sight of the snipers. I couldn't put the whole unit out of sight because I needed to stand on the objective, but I thought at least if I could get my character there, that would be useful. So now I had to bring in my Ophidian destroyers, and I had 2 choices here. I had an objective behind this building which I could have deployed on, been on an objective, and I could have just stood there all game. However, my buddy had 2 whirlwinds which obviously don't need line of sight, and I thought I could be a bit negative and just stand on the objective and try to get points, or I could be a bit more positive and maybe try to get into my buddy's back lines. So that's what I decided to do. I deep straight in his deployment zone, getting ready to hopefully assault his back lines. The heavy destroyers couldn't obviously target the whirlwinds because they were behind the building, so the only units I could shoot with them was either the tactical marines or the rhino. I decided to shoot the rhino whilst I had the opportunity, whilst I had those guns on the table, so I shot and destroyed the rhino. We were then into the assault phase, and I managed to get into assault with the whirlwind. I of course didn't destroy it. I did pop off my plasma sight, which was really useful. Those devastating wounds really helped, and whilst I didn't destroy it, I got it down to 1 wound, which is quite incredible considering that they are only strength 4, but they have a lot of attacks, and of course with those devastating wounds that was really useful. Okay, so turn 3, no objectives for the Blood Angels because when the tacticals got out they weren't in range of the objective, so no points there. However, they moved on to the objective in their movement phase, and then they shot at my Scorpec destroyers along with the sniper scouts, and between them they did a few wounds. I did use my RP stratagem allowing me to get a Scorpec destroyer back. That was really useful. And then we're into the assaults, and I managed to take the last wound off the rhino, and it did explode. I lost one of my Ophidians and my buddy took a wound on his rhino. Okay, so my turn 3, I was on 2 objectives. I moved the Ophidians in range to assault. I moved the Scorpec destroyers over to the tactical marines, getting ready to assault them. And I left the flayed ones on the objective at the back, who by this time had managed to not be battle shocked and also raise a few of their dead back up. So I had 4 of those on the objective. My heavy destroyers shot into the tactical unit, and then I assaulted them with the Scorpec destroyers and I managed to wipe them out. And then my Ophidian destroyers assaulted the whirlwind and the scouts. I didn't do that much damage on the whirlwind, but I took a bunch of the scouts out. Okay, turn 4 for the Blood Angels. 0 points, no objectives. He moved the rhino out of assault and went towards the objective in the middle of the table. He was trying to get some points. We continued the assault with the scouts and I managed to take them all out. And then it was my turn 4. This time I'm on 3 objectives thanks to the flayed ones, the Scorpec destroyers and the Locust heavy destroyers. So 3 points. I moved my Locust heavy destroyers onto the terrain just to give them a bit of protection. And then I proceeded to shoot the whirlwind and I destroyed it. And that was the end of the game, because in this mission, when one army is destroyed, the game stops. So I scored 7 points in total. Arguably, I could have not shot that whirlwind and had another turn and then scored more points if I wanted to really go all out for the win. However, I think 7-0 is probably a good enough win. So that was the game. I really enjoyed playing this game. We had a lot of fun and it was great seeing some of the units which I hadn't played before on the table. Let me know if you enjoyed this battle report, slightly different to what I normally do with the pictures and voiceover. And if you want to see some of my other 10th edition battle reports, here's a playlist for you to watch next.